If you told me before I started my watch of Is Not That Into You that my favorite man in the entire movie would be Ben Affleck's Neil, I would have laughed you right out of the room because a man who is unwilling to risk commitment with the woman he claims to love because of his hangups about marriage surely cannot be the best of a romantic interest that this film has to offer, especially when Justin Long's Alex is right there. But then Neil is right at home in the kitchen doing the dishes after having done laundry and putting in the work to offer comfort to the woman he still loves after their breakup because her dad just had a health scare and he wants to be there for her. And I realized in that moment that it's not that into you might have a bit more to say than I'd initially realized. And maybe, just maybe, I should pay attention to it. Who would have thought? The funniest thing is that I've recently been on an ensemble cast kick, and somewhere in the back of my mind, I had been working with the misassumption that Is Not That Into You isn't an ensemble movie because back when I first saw this film when it came out, my ass was 19. And the only memory I had of the film was the scene near the end when Jennifer Goodwin's character is kissed by Justin Long to the tune of Keen's Somewhere Only We Know, which did you know that it is now officially 22 years since Hopes and Fears, their debut album that had both Somewhere Only We Know and Everybody's Changing, was released? Gods, time really does fly, doesn't it? Also, now I need to do a rewatch of the first season of Grey's Anatomy because that's what I always do when Somewhere Only We Know pops into my head. I go back and I rewatch the very first episode because it's the closing song. What can I say? Music is a soundtrack to my life and the movies and shows that have defined me. For example, I can't hear Jimmy Eat World's Hear You Me without thinking of a Cinderella story. But sorry, I digress. As I was saying, the only thing I could remember about Is Not That Into You was the kiss at the end. So imagine my surprise when I started my rewatch and realized that I had zero recollection of like 75% of this movie. Now, for those of you who've just found my channel and are confused about why I'm therefore making this video, well, welcome to Romcom Ganda Tuesday, a video series where I do a first time watch or a rewatch of rom-coms from the late 80s to the 2010s just to see how well they hold up, especially with regards to things that younger me might have missed back when they initially dropped. It means that for this particular video series, I'm a bit harsher on the rom-coms I watch because I try to view them through my more adult and slightly critical lens to point out some of the ways in which rom-coms are designed to act as propaganda to get us to behave or think a certain way as it pertains to matters of love. And boy, do I have thoughts on this film, namely the fact that I ended up oscillating between wanting to scream for most of its runtime and then getting sucked into it somewhat by the end. A situation I totally attribute as well to Bradley Cooper's Ben getting his cheating ass dumped by both his wife and his mistress. But before I get into the video proper, which by the way, I do segment into three parts, the first being the intro, which is what you're currently watching, then the synopsis, and finally my thoughts, all of which will be clearly highlighted via the timestamps I would put in to help you navigate your watch time. I will like to say a big thank you to my lovely patrons and YouTube members whose support have been instrumental in helping me continue to make content, especially since I started doing this full time at the start of last year, which was the last time I was in paid employment. And a special shout out to Lena, Sherry, and Holly for their extra support. You get all the hearts and kisses too. Mwah. If you too would like to support me on Patreon or become a YouTube member to enjoy certain perks, if we can get a shout out, the link to do so is in the description bar. And with that said, It's Not That Into You features a variety of couples whose story all intertwine in various ways due to them basically knowing each other in some fashion, as is commonplace amongst movies with ensemble casts like this one. And so rather than jump from one plot point to the other, I would just give my synopsis in order, moving from one couple to the next and explaining how the different ways that they are connected to each other. And so I will start with Gigi and Alex. Now, the movie starts with a young girl who is playing at a park when she's approached from nowhere by a young boy who proceeds to push her down and declare that she smells of dog poop. Now, the adults who are present, rather than smacking the boy upside down his head and demanding he apologize, informs the girl instead that the boy was an ass because he likes her. And it's these words that Gigi, played by Jennifer Goodwin, tells us is behind the reason why so many young women and their friends, by extension, keep making excuses for men who treat women badly. It's conditioning. And Gigi, we can see, falls into this category as after her date, Kevin Connolly's Conor Barry promises to call her but doesn't and instead calls Anna, another woman is actually into, and I'll get to that in a bit. Gigi's friends instead make a ton of excuses for why Conor was not able to call, a situation that therefore has Gigi wasting her time by waiting on her phone for his call. She eventually tracks him down to a bar that he frequents with a pen from a dentist office in hand as an excuse to hopefully chat with him, as her grand plan was to pretend that she wanted to return said pen. Unfortunately for her, Connor isn't at the bar. Instead, she meets Alex, the bar owner, and the son of Connor's dentist, to Gigi's embarrassment, who realizes that her plan is a bust. To make matters worse, after telling Alex the event of what transpired, Alex, who is friends with Connor, informs Gigi that Connor is most likely not into her, as if a man really does like a woman, he will put in the effort and find whatsoever way he can to make his interest known to her. The words are a wake up call for Gigi, who finds herself reassessing her dating partners through those lens. And it helps matters that anytime she's stuck or needs further clarity, like for example, when she's kissing a date who then tells her that he will soon be in a place where he would be out of touch for a while. Alex affirms for Gigi that the dude clearly isn't interested in her and probably just wants to bang and dip, since unless he's going to the moon, he would have cell reception. This back and forth between Gigi and Alex continues, and Alex eventually tells Gigi that he has plans to set her up with his friend. But when the day of the date rolls around, Alex informs Gigi that he had accidentally given said friend the wrong date. This, combined with Alex inviting Gigi over for a party, convinces Gigi that Alex maybe likes her, and she gets herself all worked up with excitement. That night, after inadvertently playing the role of co hostess, Gigi throws herself at Alex, and Alex immediately shuts it down and points out that it's like she never paid attention to anything he taught her because clearly he is not into her. Gigi admits that yes, she might be needy and someone who always throws herself into a commitment, but at least she's willing to try, which is a lot more than Alex, who has so closed himself off from relationship and his feelings most certainly cannot say. She then walks away and actively makes plans to move on from Alex, especially when Alex's friend, who she had thought wasn't real, ends up actually calling her and asking that they go on a date together since he had missed all his chances to meet her previously. Alex, meanwhile, finds himself missing Gigi, and after trying to reach her several times and failing, which ends up leading to him practically going out of his mind, one of his employees, who he had had a brief fling with whilst they were both drunk, yes, yeah, disgusting, points out that all the signs point to Alex having caught feelings for someone. Realizing this, Alex heads over to Gigi's apartment and knocks on her door moments after her date had just left. Gigi is surprised to see Alex, who hands her a promotional pen as his excuse to see her, and then proceeds to basically explain how he's been doing all the things that Gigi formerly used to do when she really liked someone. He admits that he has caught feelings for her, but Gigi is hesitant, pointing out that based off of what Alex taught her, a man who does have interest would have done everything to make said interest known, and yet when she threw herself at him, he turned her down. Alex admits that Gigi was right in her assessment of him, that in his fears to keep himself closed off, he had missed out on all the signs to how he actually felt about her. Gigi still doesn't accept, pointing out that she's getting to know Alex's friend and the guy is nice and keeps things straight with her, and Alex insists that he can do the same and kisses her before she can continue to protest, answering her question on whether she's the rule or the exception, to which he tells her that she is his exception. Connor, like I said, is in love with his hot friend Anna, who is played by Scarlett Johansson. And whilst Gigi spends her time waiting for him to call, he spends his own time waiting for Anna to call him. Anna, though, while she once had sex with Connor, clearly isn't interested in him. Nope. Her attention is instead caught by Bradley Cooper's Ben, who she meets at a store where they are both at night to pick up some items. Anna introduces herself as an artist to Ben, who mentions that he knows someone who works as a music producer. This is great news to Anna, who wants to give Ben her number so he can reach out to her after he set up the meeting with said music producer. But then Ben turns her down to inform her that he's married, which is suspicious as fuck, by the way, because one, this dude gave zero indication that he's married, and two, all she wants is for you to hook her up with the music producer. Like, what the hell? Anyway, Gigi is like, that is fine, and asks him for his card, which he gives to her. And then when he gets to the car with his friend Neil, who drove him to the store in the first place, Neil smirks at him. Gigi ends up calling Ben, and whilst he's hesitant at first, there's this back and forth where he makes it clear that he is attracted to Gigi, and Gigi in turn has already admitted to her friend Mary that she's also attracted to Ben. Mary spins her some story about someone she knows who discovered the love of their life, even though said love was previously married. After all, what is a little adultery when there's true love on the line? God damn it. Taking the words as gospel, Gigi finds herself spending a ton of time with Ben and actively flirts with him, whilst he does the same with her, paying zero mind to his wife, Janine, played by Jennifer Connelly, who is stressed as hell watching over the renovation of their home and doubly stressed when she discovers smoked cigarettes, like cigarette butts, in their home. She challenges Ben the minute he gets home because cigarettes are a hard line for her, as he's very aware that her father died of lung cancer. Ben, however, denies this and points out to her that their house is currently under renovation, which means that there are a ton of workers with access to their home who could have easily been the one to smoke the cigarette. Janine accepts this explanation and confronts the head foreman when he shows up. The man denies it, pointing out that it's highly unprofessional for them to be smoking in a client's home and risk contaminating said home in some way. Janine is stuck and doesn't know what to do. Whilst all of this is happening, mind you, Ben ends up giving in and has sex with Anna. And when he and Janine are at Home Depot shopping for wood floors to install in their home, Janine gets a bit snarky and Ben responds by confessing to her that he had an affair. Now, it is clear he does this confession, he makes it with the hope that Janine would use it as an excuse to kick him out of the house. But Janine, who feels guilty about their sexless marriage at this point, forgives Ben instead and speaks to Gigi, who it turns out is her co-worker, about the situation. She therefore decides to show up at Ben's office to try and bring the spice back into their marriage. Unknown to her, however, Anna was also in Ben's office and they were just about to have sex when Janine showed up. This led to Ben pushing Anna into the closet and he then lets Janine in, where he proceeds to have sex with her in his office when she asks him to, with Anna in the closet. By the time they are done and Janine leaves his office, he goes to open the closet door. A furious Anna storms out, declaring that their affair is over. Janine, meanwhile, whilst cleaning up Ben's clothes, finds the packet of cigarettes in his pocket and realizes that he has been lying to her all this while. When Ben gets home after spending some time trying to work up his courage to see Anna, he finds all his things packed and on their doorstep alongside a box of the same cigarettes he'd had on him and a note from Janine informing him that she's getting a divorce. Anna, meanwhile, tries to get back together with Connor but realizes that she really isn't as interested in him as he is with her when Connor starts talking about their possible potential future together. She then tells him the truth and walks away, declaring that she intends to focus on herself outside of her relationship with men, which finally, yes. Meanwhile, Neil, Ben's friend, who is played by Ben Affleck, has been dating Beth, Janine and Gigi's co worker, for the last 7 years. Beth, who is played by Jennifer Aniston, by the way, hopes to eventually get married someday, even though Neil, her partner, is very much against the institution of marriage. After Gigi shares one of her hard love lessons that she's been getting from Alex with Janine and Beth, Beth heads home and confronts Neil to find out if he really has no plans to marry her. When she realizes that her hope would never come true as far as Neil is concerned, she breaks up with him and prepares to be the only single sibling left at her baby sister's wedding. At the wedding, after a whole day of fending passive aggressive conversations and matchmaking attempts, Beth is horrified when her father collapses. Thankfully, it's a heart attack scare, and while she and her siblings all attempt to take care of the house, her brothers in law are all useless, and Beth has to take on all the burden of care alone until Neil shows up and quietly helps her with everything. And overwhelmed Beth is grateful for his care and hugs him. Afterwards, she goes to see Neil on his boat and agrees to not marrying him if he would commit to her and promise her to vows of fidelity, which Neil readily agrees to because she's the only woman he wants. Although he's a bit sad when he learns that Beth wants him to get rid of his beloved cargo pants before moving back in with her. Neil, however, does sneak in said cargo pants, and when Beth finds them and tries tossing them out, he advises her to check the pockets first so she doesn't throw away anything valuable in the pants. When she does check the pockets, she of course finds a ring inside, and Neil gets on his knees to propose to her, declaring that all he wants is to give Beth everything that makes her happy. Beth is delighted, and the two of them get married on Neil's boat whilst at sea. Meanwhile, Mary, Anna's friend, played by Drew Barrymore, finds herself unable to connect with any man online via the apps she keeps using. She, however, finds herself running into Connor one day out in the wild and is surprised to see him since she knows him via her job as someone who places ads in the gay magazines that she recommends to him because Connor, who runs his real estate business, had hired her to place said ads for his business in the magazines. The two of them find themselves connecting and chatting, and in the after credits slash epilogues of the movie, we see that they are very much still together and in love. The end. And so, after the credits rolled, and we got some little bits of bloopers slash quick interview segments for the different characters in the film, so we are able to see how life is really holding up for them afterwards. I found myself looking through the lives of these different characters, asking myself the ultimate question: was their story and how it played out the exception or the rule? Because as much as a lot of us might want to ignore most of this film as just being the typical rom-com, and I do fall into the category in some ways, mind you, I do think that ultimately it is a film that has us asking two very important questions. Are they, and by they I mean the subject of your affection, of course. Like, I know it's not gender neutral in the movie, but let's be real, anyone can be a twat in the game of attraction that most of us find ourselves playing. So, are they really into you? And two, is your relationship the exception or is it the rule? Because having an answer to both questions would at least guarantee a somewhat peaceful existence. Like, let us take Neil and Beth, for example. The core of their relationship issues is Beth's desire for marriage, which Neil is very much anti the institution and what it stands for. Because to him, a lot of people mostly decide to get married because that is what is expected of them. It's not what they actually want. Now, is Neil right in his theory? Mostly. And to be quite fair to him, the events as they play out for Ben and his on the rocks marriage with Janine confirms that, not like Neil is aware of that at the moment. Ben never tells him. But would we say that because Neil doesn't want to marry Beth, even though that is clearly what Beth wants and has desired for most of the 7 years that they were dating, then does that mean that he is not into her? Of course not. We get active confirmation in the movie that he really does like her. Yes, he is dismissive of her desires to be married to him, but we get eventual actual proof after her father suffers a heart attack scare and all her siblings, along with their husbands, show up to care for their dad. But rather than having her various brothers step in, they just laze about and do absolutely nothing to help ease the burdens on their wives or show just how much care they have for their father-in-law, who, mind you, is the man who raised the women that this men claim to love. Now, having Neil show up, who, I repeat, Beth never even informed about the events with her dad because at this point, she had decided that since she wants marriage and Neil most certainly doesn't, it's a waste of both their time for her to remain in a relationship with him. And so they had broken up a while ago. And yet, Ben shows up not because Beth told him what happened or asked him to be there, but because he heard and he knows how much she loves her father and how much her dad loves her. And because he loves Beth and wants to be there for her, even though they aren't together anymore, he shows up and does more in one afternoon than the whole lot of Beth's brothers in law did in all the time that they'd been lazing about in the house, counting down the days until her dad died and they can lay claim to the things that they want from him via an inheritance. Neil is nothing like them in that regard. He's there, he performs acts of such incredible service and does all of this with zero expectations of Beth getting together with him because I repeat, they are broken up at this point. All he's doing is to try and provide comfort and help make things a bit easier for the woman he loves. And just like that, we are able to see that he really is into Beth. It's just that the way he shows it is not quite the way in which she had always wanted. That was the divide in their relationship. And so when you rewatch the movie and you think back to the scene when he's putting up the art on the walls because Beth had mentioned in passing that she wanted him to do so, and he had taken note of her request and executed it when he could, we realize that that has always been Neil's thing. He shows up and does the thing Beth wants in the quiet way that affirms just how much he cares for her and listens to her desires. It is that quiet care of his that gets to me, really. And it is when he shows up for her dad that Beth realizes that she wants Neil back. She wants what they once had. And she explains that as long as he remains committed to her in the way in which he would have if they had exchanged marital vows, then she's perfectly fine with them getting back together without marriage being on the table. And then, of course, Neil turns around and does end up proposing to Beth afterwards, still moving in the quiet way he does, because ultimately all he's always wanted was to meet her needs and make her happy. Now, did I think his proposal was sweet? Yes. Did I think the proposal was necessary? No. I honestly wish that the movie had kept things as they were, that Neil and Beth decided to be unorthodox with how their relationship played out, that they stood 10 toes down on their take that they didn't need marriage since they could be a decent, loving couple even without it. But alas, the movie is a rom com, so of course they aren't going to go that route. And after all, what screams happy ever after than a wedding? Plus, ultimately, if we are still going the pragmatic route, I can at least take comfort in the fact that Beth will be able to enjoy certain perks by virtue of her marriage as far as the law is concerned, which now that I'm thinking about it, I really do wish the film had turned things a bit on its head and had Beth's relationship be a queer one. It would have been a more compelling story if Neil had been a Miranda, for example, and then the whole hang up was a desire to not be heteronormative, and then we can accept the eventual marriage at the end for the sake of one, meeting Beth's desires, and two, protecting her and giving her the power to make medical decisions for her wife and vice versa. Although now that I think about it, it wouldn't make the act of Ben Affleck washing the dishes at the sink while talking about having done the laundry hit as much as it did in the movie. But anyway, we've established that he's really into a part of the equation for Neil. But I do think that it's also important for us to keep it in mind that events as they played out for Beth and Neil is an exception. Neil in the movie is an exception. His disinterest in marriage wasn't because he wanted to get all the benefits of being with Beth without committing to her, which is often the rule, and why there's that utterly misogynistic line of why buy the cow when you can get the milk for free, which ew, disgusting. But as I was saying, his disinterest in marriage really was born from him not holding the institution to very high regard. It is when he realizes just how much Beth likes the idea of marriage and wants to be married that he changes his mind. And he isn't even pressured into doing so. He does all of that on his own. That is what makes him the exception. Because the rule remains if you're dating someone for years and you want marriage, but they don't, it is better you bounce and go find someone who wants the same thing you do, or you can stay alone if that's what you prefer. Either option is way better than being stuck with someone who is going to saddle you in a 7-year relationship where they keep dangling the promise of a ring in your future without following it through with a marriage, or they end up doing so, but only to give you the most, here is the marriage you want, stop bugging me about it, barest minimum of a proposal like Ronaldo the rapist and his now fiancée Georgina. 10 years, 3 kids, rape allegations, all for the sake of being married to a man like that, to Fiakwa. Anyway, speaking of men who feel that they were pressured into marriage, We have Ben and his struggling marriage on the rocks with Janine. Now, if we still ask ourselves the question, Ben, we know, is not into Janine anymore. Hell, the fact that he only married her because she said she was tired of waiting on him to pop the question and gave him the ultimatum to either ask her to marry him or let her walk away. The fact that piece of shit, lying, cheating scum Ben tries to paint the picture that he was pushed into a corner by Janine's request and found himself giving into marrying her, which in turn led to resentment brewing within him, would never strike me as anything other than Ben doing the same old, which is his refusal to take any accountability for his own actions and choices. I mean, he could legit have let Janine go. He could have continued on with his freeman style. He didn't need to marry her. Hell, if he had let her go, maybe she would have found someone else already. But he doesn't do that. And instead, he has them both stuck in a loveless marriage where he's clearly not into his wife and not sexually attracted to her anymore. Which, of course, is when Anna comes in, young, hot, sexy as fuck, and Ben spends half of his scenes doing the bullshit of, I'm attracted to you, but I can't because I have a wife, but I'm attracted to you. Talk about the king of mixed signals. And he's also the one in the movie's cast that shows clearly that his fuckassery is the rule, not the exception. Married men who paint themselves as being these powerless beings who are needlessly seduced by other people outside of their partners, who never have the guts to just come out and say that they want more out of their marriage or that they want out of it, but instead want to eat their cake and have it too. A situation that is so perfectly captured by the scene when Anna, who he was just about to have sex with, and we get the iconic shot of Scarlett Johansson in hot red lingerie, is forced into the closet, and Ben proceeds to have sex with Janine with his mistress trapped in the closet in his office. Like, if that doesn't affirm that he's a piece of shit who wants the best of both worlds, I don't know what else to say. He is the rule, not the exception. And the entire basis of the movie was to have both Janine and Anna see that, hence why they both dump his lying, cheating ass. Anna, who thought that she could maybe make things work with Connor, her friends with benefit situationship, who wants an actual relationship with her, realizes that she really has no feelings for Connor. And so she tells him the truth of things and walks away to focus on herself and her job, which I found myself applauding. Now, some people might say that maybe Anna's thing is that she's only interested in unavailable men like Ben, which is why she didn't feel as interested in Connor. But I don't know. You could see the sparks between her and Ben, even before she found out that Ben, who by the way had been subtly flirting with her, was married. Like, I am not going to absolve Anna of all the blame, as we did see her actively chasing after a married man, but at the same time, I'm a firm believer that it is up to the person who made the vows to keep it. The onus was on Ben to not be an utter dirtbag. He should have maintained his integrity and kept his damn vows. And then we have Gigi and Alex, who, like I said earlier in the video, theirs was the only romance slash story I actually remembered in the entire movie from my previous watch. And I only remembered the end of it too. Now, do I belong to the group of viewers that felt such secondhand embarrassment for Gigi in her antics for most of the film when she kept chasing after men who were clearly not interested in her? Yes. But do I also understand why the whole situation was driving her crazy? Yes, I do. It is unfair that these men kept giving her mixed signals and were not clear about their disinterest. I am a firm believer in everyone just being honest about what they want. If all you want is to fuck, then just say so. If you want more, then say so. If we have a date and things don't work out, then just spell it out and make it clear. It is obvious that what was driving Gigi out of her damn mind was the fact that these men weren't being upfront about things with her, which was feeding into her delusions. And I think it is when she reads herself of that and accepts that what she wants at her core is a man who is honest about what he wants and doesn't play any games with her. That is when we see her character actually settle. Like, it is clear that Gigi is a gorgeous, intelligent woman. We were simply introduced to her at a time in her life when her relationships were driving her out of her mind. And it is why it is such a sharp contrast to the Gigi we meet at the end. She knows what she wants, has identified it, and would not settle for less than that. And that is, of course, the point when Alex shows up to admit to his own feelings and interest in her. Now, for a brief moment, a part of me was like, But based off of everything this movie has been on about, he never did show any signs of being into her. But then I thought about it a bit more. Like, sure, his friend Bill was actually real, and Alex really did have plans to set Gigi up with him. So Gigi's supposition that Alex was merely pretending to have a friend so he wouldn't admit to liking her was false. But she did have a point that he was always willing to talk to her, even going as far as interrupting his makeout session with another woman in order to take Gigi's calls. However, all of this just showed more of a friendly Alex to me. I really do see Alex in two ways. There's the Alex before the party, before Gigi hurls her body across his, in her own words. Then there's Alex post party, after Gigi points out the mixed signals he had been sending her and comes to the realization about the type of person she is and how she doesn't regret it since she doesn't want to be closed off like he is. Now, pre party Alex, I still don't think actually liked Gigi. He wasn't into her in those moments. But after Gigi left, and he was left with days, weeks of thinking about her and missing her, I can believe that Alex found himself falling for her. And so post-party Alex is the one who comes to the realization about his feelings for her and finds his way to Gigi's door. Thankfully, all he said was that he was starting to fall for her, because if he had come right out and claimed to love her, I would have tossed my slipper at my TV. But still, in the internal question of is Alex and Gigi situation the exception or the rule? Well, I think Alex answers it perfectly well that Gigi is his exception, because outside of that, the rule stays the same. If the person you are interested in is not making the effort to indicate that they like you or that your interest is in some way wholeheartedly returned, then they most likely are not that into you. But of course, these are just my thoughts. I would, as always, love to hear yours. Whether or not you agree with me, please share them in the comments. Like this video, however, if you've watched this far and haven't done so yet, but enjoyed anything of what I had to say, share it so others can find my channel as well. Or you can check out my gaming or ASMR channels if they sound like something you might potentially possibly be interested in. I have them both linked in the description bar. I will see you tomorrow with a new video. Until then, do remember, obsessing over the things you love, perfectly valid coping mechanism.